All right, YouTube, Repo Man 64. Oh, there it is. It's showing it. All right, so I come on here just to go over what we're going to see over the next 10 days. Yeah, I thought we would see something occur on the 16th. Let me get that out of my chin. Something occur on the 16th. Currently, now I was just watching Mark Allison's 88's YouTube. I'm not a news guy. I don't try to pretend to know the news like Chris over Global Rapture Watchers and Watchwoman 65, Lisa Boyce. They do. I go to their channels to watch the news. And currently, they are hitting Yemen. Trump is hitting Yemen, or we are. United States is, and Israel is hitting Damascus pretty hard. Um, I'm not thoroughly convinced that Damascus must be a ruinous heat before the rapture. I believe, and I don't know 100%. I don't. I just don't know 100%. But I think Damascus is more of a thing for the tribulation saints to know that the great tribulation is about to begin. So I've been talking with Sister Sandy a little bit on Discord in a private chat, and her date is March 26th. And this is a very important day. This is the day that Jesus rode in on the donkey and the colt. This is the triumphant entry. This is also the day that Joshua uh, went into the promised land 33 days after Moses died on Adar 7. So, with all that being said, March 26th begins to look very promising. I it took me years, and watching Dr. Barry and all the seven feasts, it took me quite a few years to begin to realize that we are not a part of those seven feasts. While we will be celebrating those seven feasts, and we're going to love it, just like we enjoy celebrating all of our holidays here and getting off work and getting paid, or getting paid while you work. The same thing will happen in heaven. We will celebrate those, but there's going to be a birth before she travailed. There's going to be a birth. And I don't think that we're going in the middle, and I don't know for certain. I guess we'll find out as time goes on, but I don't think we're born in the middle or raptured in the center of those seven feasts. I think we're the eighth feast. That being said, all seven feasts have passed. We are now knocking on the door of Passover, which will happen on March 30th, which is 14 days from Nisan 1. Happy New Year. Today is Nisan 1. It's March 17th. It is St. Patrick's Day today. The wink that we get throughout the year is like the flood began on Halloween. St. Patrick's Day is the head of the year. Christmas Day is when Jesus was conceived. We get this wink going on with the Gregorian calendar. Even though they changed it, we show creation was in 4003 BC, exactly 4,000 years later. Jesus was born in 3 BC, and that's because they made mistakes. Creation actually began in 4000 BC, not 4003. Jesus was born in the 0 year, actually. But I was going to sit down and do a lot of math on that, and I realized it's just too much to explain. So I will go through some numbers with you and show you where we're at. And yeah, I think we're going any moment. Literally, the rapture could occur at any moment. And I want to show you where we're at on the timeline right now. So let me share the screen. Oh, say thank you to Sister Sandy for the background. She gave me a nice clean version, although I didn't mind having everybody in there with me, but this is the secret broadcast cave, and I'm supposed to be the only one in here, Sister Sandy. So, sorry. All right. So I'm sharing, right? Yeah, okay. I'm sharing. Let's go to this. That didn't work. There we go. All right. So I'll take you through the original timeline that I built 7 years ago, 6 years ago, and show you where we are right now. Currently, we are right here. We are on March 17th. This is the head of the year. There is no other date as solid as March 16th. They did it. They've already done it. You know that. This is the Julian calendar from the time Jesus was here. This is what it looked like. The year began on March 17th on the Julian calendar. Over the course of 1582 years, the Julian calendar went wrong by 10 days. And so March 6th was the day of equal parts. They knew that and they had to fix it, which is what they did. They fixed it. He put his name on it, but you're looking at the Julian calendar with a patch fix, which fixed the problem that they had with the time going wrong over the course of time, as well as fixed the time that had gone wrong by 10 days. Now, March 17th is the first day of the year. It is Rosh Hashanah. Exodus 12 is abundantly clear that this Rosh Hashanah, what it means is head of the year. Head of the year does not happen in September. I've gotten a few comments, and that's fine if that's what you want to believe, but that is a Jewish idea. They will not accept Exodus 12. They will not move it to the head of the year because Exodus 12 clearly says that. And then when you continue reading in Exodus, not in Exodus, in Leviticus, you keep reading, you see God begins to set up the 7 feast days. And one of the first ones he sets up is here on September the 15th, as he calls it, trumpets. Trumpets, in fact, replaced the Rosh Hashanah of that time. I could get into a whole explanation as to why that had to happen, but let's just that used to be spring. September used to be spring before the flood. After the flood, September became fall because of an issue that happened during the flood with the earth tilting. But again, I don't want to get into all that. That is why God had to change the head of the year, because that event took place during the flood, which, of course, mathematically, there's reasons why he did it. And I can show that to you easily. Currently, Jesus has found out the day before that Lazarus has died, and then he sits still for 2 days. Why? For 2,000 years, I've been trying to figure out why, and it dawns on me. It's Rosh Hashanah. Rosh Hashanah is a 2-day feast. Rosh Hashanah, you can't go anywhere for those 2 days. Trumpets over here on September the 15th is a 1-day feast, not a 2-day feast. It's 1-day feast. So that's how we know. Several clues we get that this, in fact, is Rosh Hashanah, March 17th. So Happy New Year. Now, go 2 days. He sits 2 days. We go 2 days. He doesn't move until the 18th. So 16, 17, 18. 2 days, he doesn't move. After 2 days, he walks, and it takes him 2 days. We know it does. The Bible doesn't specifically state it, but it says he sat still for 2 days, and then he went to Lazarus, and Lazarus was raised on the 4th day, meaning that it took 2 days to get there. Also meaning that it took 2 days for the messengers that Mary and Martha sent off to Jesus. Mary and Martha couldn't go. They were unclean. They had touched a dead body. They buried Lazarus. He was in the grave for 4 days when Jesus raised him. Mary and Martha had to perform a ceremony after 3 days. So this is something to watch. Remember I said I keep seeing this 3773? Well, 3 days after March 16th is March 19th. This is the day that Mary and Martha would have had to perform a ceremony on the 3rd day, and on the 7th day they would have been clean, allowing, according to the law, Jesus didn't come to break the law, he came to fulfill it, allowing Jesus to have a meal with Mary, Martha, and Lazarus on the 8th day. The Bible records that it was 6 days before the cross. March 24th is, in fact, 6 days before March 30th. Now, the next event, of course, we will see is on today's New Year's Day. We'll see Mary and Martha perform that ceremony where they will be clean. We have the 3 days, and then we have from there Lazarus being raised right here. Lazarus is raised on March 20th. On March 20th, Lazarus is raised 4 days after he dies. He dies back here on March 16th when Jesus said, "Are there not 12 hours in a day?" And in fact, on that day, there are 12 hours of daylight, 12 hours at night. That's not the only thing I use to know that that's the day. There's several verses in the Bible that show that March 16th is that day. So we go over here March 20th. 19th is a very high watch day because of the ceremony that Martha and Mary had to perform. And March 20th is a high watch day. The dead in Christ rise first. You can ask Mr. Bones. He will tell you every video he makes that the dead in Christ rise first. Lazarus is dead. He is risen here on March 20th. Here, Mary and Martha are clean after 7 days on March 23rd. And then we have this meal with them on the 8th day, Nisan 8, March 24th, where this meal takes place. Could this be the meal that we have with Jesus in heaven? Could we go at the same time as Lazarus is raised? The dead in Christ rise first, we go, and then we have this meal the next day in heaven. Or is Sister Sandy right? And don't tell her that she's right. We can't have her think that she's right, but she could be right. Nisan 10 is a huge day. March 26th is a very big day. This is the day that the triumphant entry of Jesus. He rode into town on a donkey and a colt. On this day is the day that Joshua enters the promised land on March 26th. God uses this date several times, and it is Nisan 10, and Nisan 10 falls exactly 10 days after the day of equal parts, 12 hours a day, 12 hours at night. And so March 26th is a very high watch day. This is Sister Sandy's day. And then we know that this is the night that he is in the house of the Pharisee, Simon, who had leprosy. We know it has to be after dark because Jesus' head is anointed. It can only be anointed 4 days prior. So while we see the stories in the Bible are conflated together, as far as this meal at Lazarus' house and the meal at Simon's house, they are not the same story. They're a different story, even though the names are almost similar or the same. And the events appear to be the same. In this meal here, Jesus' feet was, she wiped his feet with the oil. And here at sunset, before the triumphant entry, he has, I don't have it on here, but he has this meal. I think it's on the next graph, but he has this meal at Simon's house where his head is anointed. It had to have happened after sunset. Then the next day is his triumphant entry. That happens to be 4 days before the cross. So that means at sunset over here at some point, his head was anointed. The next day, which is the same day because day starts at sunset, he makes his triumphant entry. Then the next big thing we see, and which also makes Sister Sandy's date so huge, is not only is there a meal with Lazarus, Mary, and Martha here, which could be a high rapture watch day that we're in heaven having this meal, but so is the Last Supper. That's also huge because it happens at sunset on Nisan 13 becoming Nisan 14. That's how Jesus was able to have the Last Supper, the Passover dinner with his apostles, as well as being the Passover, because it's a 24-hour period of time. And so in that 24-hour period of time, at nightfall, the Last Supper, until he goes and gives up the ghost on the cross at 3 p.m. My personal opinion is this begins the next 7 feasts. My personal opinion is that we must go prior to this. And based on what I'm seeing in the news right now, this is going to heat up real quick. And Iran is going to have to put up or shut up right now. They're going to have to do something because they know that if they have something that they can use against Israel, they better use it right now because America is going to find it and destroy it before they can use it. So in my opinion, it is time to put up or shut up and fire whatever this thing is. And again, I've said this many times, Israel cannot nuke Damascus. We know that it's a nuke because nobody can go there ever again. It's irradiated. Nobody can go there and survive. So we know that Israel can't do it because the whole world will turn on Israel forevermore. We know that the United States is not going to do it out of fear of retaliation from Putin. I think what happens is they already have one, and Russia's been over there giving them a guidance system. But at some point when they launch this thing, it's going to fail, and they are in essence going to nuke themselves. That's what I think is going to happen. I can't see any other way out of this where Damascus is destroyed and the entire world doesn't go up against the United States and Israel for dropping a nuke. I just don't see it happening. But I do see where they show this thing. Everybody's got a camera phone. Well, I mean, if you have a camera phone, hopefully you're uploading live because you're not going to be around your phone's not going to be around to talk about it after that. But I do see an event where they can see this thing taking off for Damascus. It goes up and something miscalculates and it comes right back down. That's the only way I can see this event take place, but it has to take place. It's in the Bible. It must take place. It has to take place. So, all right, this is the same timeline, only in graph form. Let's see. We are right here on Rosh Hashanah, March 17th. And as we go forward, everything must finish for us, as far as the rapture, must finish by Nisan 14, March 30th. So, in my opinion, we are looking at high rapture watch day on the date Lazarus rises. The dead must rise first. We have the triumphant entry on Nisan 10, March 26th. And this last meal with Simon the leper at sunset. That's why that arrow's there, because it's at sunset. It actually winds up being on the Saturday, on the Sabbath. Jesus goes to the cross on a Sabbath. This is a Wednesday. It's a Wednesday Sabbath. There are 2 Sabbaths every week, Saturday and Wednesday. And so we go forward. Could we go at some point like she thinks, and then we have this meal in heaven with Jesus? Remember, when John shows up in heaven, what does he see? He does not see our mansions. He does not see our rod of iron. He does not see our banquet. He doesn't talk about that stuff. That would be noteworthy, something you'd want to talk about. What he does see is a group of people casting their crowns back to the one that deserves those crowns. And there's a whole lot more than 24 of those crowns. All right. So we're going to continue to watch every single day. Happy New Year, March 17th, every single day through the 26th and even up to the Last Supper. This might be the meal we have. This might be the day that John is taken up there because he's there. He's crying because there's nobody to open the scrolls. And all of a sudden, here shows up this lamb who's been slain. That's the day that it happened. Time is irrelevant in heaven. Time does not function in heaven the way it functions here. So, in my opinion, this is the day John shows up. But we show up somewhere back here. Mansions, banquet, rod of iron, last meal, and then this event here, Jesus for us. And I've heard this, and we've tried to grapple with this. We're trying to wrap our minds around this concept that the Bible says we're already there, meaning that time means nothing in heaven, that it's all eternity. It just doesn't ever end. It doesn't ever begin. It always was. Therefore, this is the moment that John shows up and sees all of these things. I can't even wrap my mind around this concept. It's too much. it's just too much. All right, so we know how to count the Shemitah cycle now. We know that 2018 was a Sunday. 2019 was a Monday. 2020 was a Tuesday, all the way down to 2024, which the new year began on March. Well, for us, we call it 2025, but it's actually 2024 until March 16th. It is now March 17th. The Jubilee year has just began. It is the 50th year, but it's also the first year of the Shemitah cycle, the next 49. The 49 ended over here on March 16th. They share this year. That's why we count the Jubilees by 49. We do not count them by 50. That's way too simple. You had to know this wasn't that easy. It was not that easy. So the 50th year that's why I have one down here. That's a whole year. And this is in the entire 50th year. I have this wrong. I was actually schooled by in a live with Black Swan, and I could have swore that I read that we could sow in the Jubilee year. We cannot. This is a no. We cannot sow in the Jubilee year. I should have crossed that off and put the word no. In the 48th year, which is this, you see 48th year, God gives enough crop to last for 3 years. It only needed to last for 2 years, but God gave them enough for 3, just so they weren't concerned, so they could trust him to know that God gives, and he gives more abundantly. So in the year, what we would call 2023, they were able to sow, they were able to reap. In the 49th the 49th Shemitah cycle, there is no sowing, there is no reap. They could not. The plentiful came in the 48th year. They had enough for 3 years. They stored it up. They could eat for the next 1, 2. And here, remember, now they begin to sow. Now they begin to reap, but they still got to plant. It takes time. So that's why God gave 1, 2, and then half of this year would be consumed by waiting for the plants to grow. So the answer over here is no sowing, no reaping. I told Shane that I would have to go back in and study that, and I made a mistake. The answer is no. All right, so we're going to continue forward. This is the Jubilee count. I have found that human error has entered into this count since day one. Creation could not have been in 4003 BC. It was in 4000. Jesus was not born in 3 BC. It was 0. But for the sake of our understanding, because we are on this timeline that we're on, we have to count it this way. Technically, this isn't 2025. It's 2028, technically. So there are going to be passages in the Bible that appear to contradict, but they actually don't, because our count is not right. Does it make any sense to begin creation in 4003 and then 4,000 years Jesus comes on the scene and it's not 0 year? So it literally makes no sense. So when you do a BC to AD count, you'll notice that we have 13 and a half years and 10 years here, but Jesus was 12 and a half years old when he was in the temple. There is an error written right into the count. There is a 1 year error. And the reason is because they will end BC and start AD. You can't do it that way. You have to overlap BC and AD to get rid of that 0 year. That by definition is the 0 year. When you go BC, it ends, and AD it begins. It doesn't work like that. It has to, and it doesn't really matter at this point. We've proven by the 49-year count that this is the Jubilee. We are in it now. We are in the Jubilee year right now. So I will go forward. And again, let me see if I can enlarge this for you guys. Okay, here we are. This is Sister Sandy. Ha ha, I'm right. You're wrong, Sister Sandy. So we're back to her date. Ugh. But it's okay. We are that close. We're seeing everything going down. We are that close right now to this rapture going on here within moments. Could happen right now. It literally could happen right now. Now, so from, and again, we have that 1 year problem. It's not technically 30 AD, it's 31 AD, and it's not technically 70 AD, it's 71. But for our purposes of understanding, from the cross to the ninth of Av, I think I misspoke in the last one. I said the ninth of I, fifth of Iyar or something. I was in so much pain, I couldn't think straight. But it's the ninth of Av, and it adds up to 14,726 days after Jesus went to the cross that the temple was destroyed. There is no other math that works out like 14,726. It just doesn't work out. So this wound up being a nice little nugget that I found. This is what happens when I do this. It just doesn't add up. It's 14,361 doesn't really say anything to us. So this is what it looks like when you count with the 0 year. God proves it with the 49-year count. It's so simple. From creation, 4003, until the current year we're in, 2025, it is 6,028 years. But if you take out that 0 year, it's actually 6,027. This, I would liken it to a 2D view. This is a 2D view. This is from everyone's perspective. It's not a 3D view. This is 2D. Same thing here. 3996 is the year that Adam was booted out of the garden. He was in the garden for 7 years of just blissfulness, and we're going to have 7 years of a complete nightmare coming up. In the middle, 7 and 7, you have this period of time, the 6,000 years, and then we have a count that I can show you. But 6,028 again is a 2D expression. It's actually 6,027 with no 0 year. And I can prove it with the Jubilee count. 123 Jubilees, 49-year count is a 3D expression. It is 6,027. Remember, when we did our math, that's what happens when you leave the year 0 in there. It's off by a year. This is accurate, which makes this not 2025, it makes it 2024. If that helps anyone, I don't know. All right. Now you add the 7 years of the tribulation, it comes to 6,034. What does the 6,034 mean? With the 0 year, which we can't help but count because it just doesn't look great when you overlap, it is 35 years. What's that? Why were we here 35 years past the 6,000 year mark? Well, there were rules. Those rules were that mankind had to be here alone. That's why do you think God doesn't just speak to everybody all the time? I mean, he gives dreams and stuff. It says that in the Bible. He just doesn't show up somewhere and says, "Hey, I'm here. Guess what?" No, it just doesn't happen. That's why mankind has had to go through this and we have evidence, but we have to make a clear choice to choose Jesus because we have this free will. And that's what God set this whole thing up for is I'm going to give them just enough evidence to either accept me or deny me. I'm going to give you just enough evidence to believe or not believe. And then it's up to you to either believe or don't believe. And that's exactly what we've been experiencing for 6,000 years. 33 and a half years is Jesus from birth to cross. A half a year for Exodus 12, because God did move the head of the year. It says it right there in Exodus 12. This now is the head of your year. And the 1 year that Noah was on the ark. He was actually on the ark 1 year and 10 days. When you add all those together, this is the period of time that Satan would have to argue about. It adds up to 35, 33 and a half, 34 and a half, 2 halves, 35 years. That's why we went over, but the count is actually 6,034 in a 3D expression, but 35 in a 2D expression. And as to what we understand time to look like, this is from creation to the end of the tribulation. That's the total period of time, 6,035 years. I hope that I'm not losing anybody, that you can wrap your mind around this and you understand why we have gone past the 6,000 years. This is why. Satan would call it cheating. Well, you said that they had free choice, but there you are walking around with them for 33 and a half years. So God said, okay, we'll put that time here. You changed the head of the year. What about those 6 months? They're not going to have to live those 6 months. You said 6,000 years, not 5,999 and a half years. Okay, let's add that in. What about Noah? He wasn't toiling on the ground for a year and 10 days. You said that they had to toil in the dirt for 6,000 years. There's a year that he didn't. All right, Satan, we'll add that in. That's why you get to 6,035. Now, in a Jubilee cycle, 100, look at that number, 144 Jubilee cycles. Remember, we were back here on 6,035. We already have 35 years under our belt at the end of the tribulation, 35 years. Here we are at the end of the 7,000 years. 35 years was given. It's actually 34. Remember, in a 2D expression, it's 35, but it's actually 34. So over here, we have this leftover. It has to go in increments of 49. 144, if it was less, if it was 49 years less than this, then it would not be 1,000-year reign of Christ. And he said 1,000 years. He's not giving up any time either. If it was the next 49 to be 145 times 49, it would go way over the 7,000. This is the number that actually matches 7,056, 7,057 with no 0 year. All right. What we wind up with, 7,056 minus 6,034. Again, this is a 3D expression. We wind up with 1111. We wind up with Jesus taking his 1,000 years, and then the last 22 years, that's the little season. It's not 6 months. It's not 3 months. It's not 1 year. It is 22 years long. That's how long it will be that Satan will be loosed to tempt the earth one last time. A little season, 22 years in light of 7,000 years is a little season. It's a tiny amount of time. 11 plus 11, 22 years he will be given to tempt. And remember, what does 11 mean? Chaos, destruction. That's what Satan will do. He will try to convince these people, because now 1,000 years has passed, generations have passed, and he will say to these people, are you sure you want to follow him? If you follow me, I got this internet thing. I mean, I don't even know how people consider him, but they do. They follow him. I don't understand it, but they follow him. God's the one that's omnipotent, but Satan uses technology thinking that makes him omnipotent. It's ridiculous that people follow that, but they do. In English, phrases 22 or 2 and 20 used for 22 are recorded 25 times in the King James Version. These phrases are found the most in First Chronicles 4 times, followed by Numbers, First Kings, Second Chronicles, and Nehemiah. The number 22, which is double 11, which symbolizes disorder and chaos. If the math didn't keep doing this, absolutely falling perfectly into place the way it continues to do, if the math didn't continue to do this, then I would have had to stop, but it keeps doing this. It keeps showing these things. Satan's going to have 22 years. That's crazy. How do you account for a zero? If you wanted again, this is not 2025, this is 2024, but because what they did was they said, well, 1 BC goes to here, and then 1 AD starts at the end of 1 BC and it goes here. And that's simply not accurate. It shares this one, because when you're here counting backwards from here, start here and count backwards, 1 BC. Start here and count this way, 1 AD. You see, it overlaps, because 1 BC and 1 AD is this actually, did you know this actually came out from the Catholic Church about 500 years ago? This wasn't a thing. Prior to that, it was on the Julian count, was the counting the days. I wonder if the Julian count is not accurate, except for it beyond. If it was to continue on, by now, I surmised that the Julian calendar would be off by 14 days. I think it was 14 or 15 days. I did the math on it at one point. So whatever number the Julian calendar currently shows, you would have to add those 15 days because they were short. We had to take 10 days away because they, in order to fix it, because they were not counting. Is it not counting enough, or they were? I have to go back in and restudy that. At this point, I don't know if it's relevant, but at any rate, your BC and AD, a new thought brought to you by the Catholic Church, uh, began their count. They went 1 BC, then they went 1 AD. That gives you a 0 year automatically, and that's why the Jubilee cycle does not line up with this count unless you take this out. So, like I said, this is not 2025. Actually, it's 2024. So, yeah, that's a that's a mind blower right there. So, did I find it? Tiberius Caesar, the second Roman emperor, reigned from AD 14 to 37. Oh, this was a discussion I was having with Bill the artist, and I cannot. It would say that Jesus was baptized in 29 AD. The problem with that is everyone's using a different calendar. If I take those 3 years from the very beginning and slide it forward three, this would not be 2024. It would be 2027. So wrap your mind around that. All the times and all the seasons are so messed up. The closest I can get you is a straight count from the beginning until now. And by the way, this entire year is the Jubilee year. I can't not tell you that. This whole year is the Jubilee year. And there's overlapping jubilees. There's another jubilee that began when Adam was kicked out. The Jesus is going to take his people in a jubilee year, and the only way to make that happen was when 7 years after Adam was in the garden, he was kicked out. You count 123 jubilees, and it brings you to the end of the tribulation. He's also taking his people out, and then Satan is bound. And then if you continue to count all the way through to 1056, it's a Jubilee year. Satan loses. That's it. He's destroyed. He's got 22 years. He's absolutely destroyed. So it matches to the Jubilees. By virtue of the Jubilees, you can figure the rest of this out. But there's so many different counts. People don't know BC, AD. They don't know. They do all this stuff and they write these papers basing it on the Catholic Church's timeline, and they're always wrong. They're just off. They're just off. Jesus in 26 and a half AD was baptized. He was here 33 and a half years, not 35 or 37. He was here 33 and a half years. If not, it will not match the Jubilee cycle of 123. I showed that to you. 123 times 49, it must land on 6,035. Like I showed you, that 6,034 is a Jubilee cycle. It has to. That has to happen. They don't know when he was baptized, but they're guesstimating somewhere around 26 or 27 AD. I say it's 26 and a half. That's how old Adam was when he was made or created. And 7 years later, when he was 33 and a half, he was kicked out of the garden. Likewise, Jesus was baptized in 26 and a half. And 3.5 years later, when he was 33 and a half, he gave up the ghost on the cross, fixing what Adam had done. So I've been trying to figure this out for some time. The concept of BC and AD, Anno Domini, meaning the year of our Lord, as a dating system was first proposed by the Christian monk. I said Catholic. Was that in 525 AD a Catholic monk? I don't know. I thought it was a Catholic, but in 525 AD, I also misspoke on that. So 525 years after the death, he came up with this BC AD, and this is what he shows. This year, 1 BC and 1 AD share the same year, just like I've been talking about. I found this on the internet yesterday. I have a date on it. Well, I don't remember what date I found this. A couple days ago, maybe 5:32 p.m. I think it was yesterday or the day before, but it shares the same date. He knew that. when he made this back in 525 AD, he knew that it shared that day. So it does share BC and AD share this year right here. They have to overlap. Oh, I made a bigger picture of it. One and one BC, one AD. They share the same line. Otherwise, you wind up with this extra year, which I showed you. 6028 is not 6027. 6035 is not 6034. It's off by a year because we keep counting the 0 year right here. All right. Why did I? For we are saved by hope, but hope that is seen is not hope. For what a man seeth, why doth he yet hope for? But if we hope for what we see not, then do we with patience wait for it. I'm not sure why I have that. March 16th, this happened on my phone. John. Oops, wrong way. I always go the wrong way. John 6:44. That's been happening for me quite a bit lately. Nobody comes to the Father lest the Father draw him. I'm paraphrasing. And in the last day, he will raise him up. And that's the picture Sister Sandy gave me, a cleaned up picture. How does she know about the blocks? Does she have a camera in here? Those are the blocks I have for the boards. She has the boards. That's wild. How does she know that? That's cool. All right, let me stop sharing. Just a quick video. I know it's a lot of math, and I guess what I'm trying to do is to give you some comfort to know that we are in fact in the Jubilee year. And again, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you that the Jubilee year will last until March 16th of 2026. And I do believe that we are the eighth feast. I think that we're going to be raptured at some point before the seven feasts or some point after. I don't even want to think about after, but we are in a Jubilee year, and the very last possible moment would be, and honestly, the imagery we couldn't go past March 16th because now we're out of the Jubilee year. So the imagery of John crying because Jesus, um, well, he wasn't there, and then he shows up. That's the moment he was crucified. Even though we're there and all this stuff has already happened, he shows up at that moment. Time overlaps, if I could explain it that way. So I think that we're looking at any moment now. Any moment now, the skies will go dark, the rapture will occur, and everyone will think that we were just taken out of here to get us out of the way because we weren't cool like everyone else was. So anyway, like, comment, share, and subscribe. I was invited to go on with Departure Heaven tonight. I'll be in the chat room maybe a little bit, but I do have to get up very early in the morning, and his show is always at 9:30, 10 o'clock, depending on how long his prologue is or prelogue is. So I won't be able to make it tonight because, again, I got to get up very early in the morning to go to work. So, but I wish those guys a really a good conversation over there. And we're just going to keep watching. Just keep watching. The day is going to happen. We'll all be standing here and boo, that's it. We're gone. All right. Go to a quiet place by yourself. Nobody needs to know, and you don't need to tell anybody. Accept the Lord into your heart. We are out of time. There is no more time. If 22 years is a little season, imagine what a week is. There's no time. So make that decision and make it now. I would imagine that most people in here have already made that decision. But if you just happen to be going by my video and you saw this video and you're a very numerical type person, and this has kind of made you stop and think, how do those jubilees line up so well with the math that we currently have? It's time. We're going home. We'll see you all later.